Sarah Mitchell woke up on Tuesday morning, just like she had for the past 3 years. Her alarm clock rang at 5:30 in the morning. She lived in a small apartment just 10 minutes away from Camp Pendleton Military Base in California. Sarah was not a soldier. She was a civilian contractor who fixed things on the base. Her job was to repair walls, floors, and equipment that got damaged during military training. Sarah had never wanted to work on a military base. After high school, she went to trade school to learn about construction and repair work. She was good with her hands and could fix almost anything. When she graduated, jobs were hard to find. Her friend told her about contract work on military bases. The pay was good and the work was steady. Sarah needed money to pay her bills, so she took the job. At first, everything felt strange. The base was huge and confusing. There were soldiers everywhere wearing uniforms and carrying weapons. Sarah felt out of place in her work clothes and tool belt, but after a few months she got used to it. The soldiers were actually very nice to her. They always said hello and thanked her for her work. Sarah began to feel comfortable on the base. On this Tuesday morning, Sarah got dressed in her usual work clothes. She wore sturdy jeans, steel toe boots, and a navy blue work shirt. She ate a quick breakfast of toast and coffee. Then she grabbed her large tool bag and headed to her truck. The morning was cool and quiet. Most people were still sleeping, but Sarah always started work early. When she arrived at the base, Sarah showed her identification card to the security guard. The guard knew her well and waved her through with a smile. Sarah drove to the maintenance building where she picked up her work orders for the day. Her supervisor, Jim, was already there drinking coffee and looking at paperwork. Jim was a friendly man in his 50s who had been working on military bases for 20 years. He knew everything about the base and always helped Sarah when she had questions. This morning, he handed her a work order and shook his head. "The indoor firing range has some serious damage," Jim said. "Several panels on the back wall are completely worn out. If we don't fix them today, someone could get hurt from flying bullets that bounce back. This is a priority job, Sarah. You need to get it done as soon as possible." Sarah looked at the work order. The indoor firing range was located in Building 47, which was about a mile away from the maintenance building. She had worked there before, but not very often. The firing range was where soldiers practiced shooting their weapons. It was always loud and busy during training hours. The back wall of the firing range was made of special materials that could stop bullets safely. When soldiers fired their weapons, the bullets would hit the wall and stick there instead of bouncing back. But after thousands of bullets hit the same spots, the wall materials would wear out and become dangerous. That was where Sarah came in. She had to remove the old damaged sections and install new ones. Sarah loaded her truck with the tools and materials she would need. She took her drill, hammer, measuring tape, and safety equipment. She also loaded several new wall panels into the back of her truck. These panels were heavy and made of thick rubber and steel. Each panel weighed about 50 pounds. The drive to Building 47 took about 10 minutes. Sarah parked her truck near the entrance and began unloading her tools. The building was quiet this early in the morning. Most training exercises didn't start until later in the day. Sarah liked working when it was quiet because she could focus better on her job. She entered the building and walked down a long hallway to the indoor firing range. The range was a large room with concrete walls and bright lights. At one end of the room were the shooting positions where soldiers would stand to fire their weapons. At the other end was the back wall where the bullets would hit. This was where Sarah needed to do her work. Sarah turned on all the lights and looked at the damaged wall. She could see that several panels were badly worn. Some had deep holes where bullets had hit the same spot many times. Others had cracks that made them unsafe. Sarah knew that if soldiers tried to use this range without repairs, bullets could bounce back and hurt someone. She set up her tools and put on her safety equipment. This included safety glasses, work gloves, and ear protection. Even though no one was shooting today, Sarah always wore ear protection in the firing range. The concrete walls made every sound much louder. Sarah started by carefully removing the most damaged panels. This was slow work because she had to be very careful not to damage the wall structure behind the panels. She used her drill to remove screws and her hammer to carefully separate the panels from the wall. As she worked, Sarah thought about how different her life was now compared to 3 years ago. Before this job, she had worked for a small construction company that mostly built houses. The work was good, but the company went out of business during tough economic times. Sarah was unemployed for several months before she found this job. Working on a military base had taught Sarah many new skills. She learned about different types of materials and equipment that she had never seen before. She also learned about safety procedures and military regulations. The work was more interesting than she had expected. After working for about an hour, Sarah had removed 4 damaged panels. She could see that the wall structure behind them was still solid and safe. Now she needed to install the new panels. This was the hardest part of the job because the new panels were heavy and had to be positioned exactly right. Sarah was focused on her work and didn't notice that something was different this morning. Usually she would hear sounds from other parts of the building as soldiers arrived for training. But today the building seemed unusually quiet. She didn't know that there had been changes to the training schedule overnight. She didn't know that a special group of soldiers was supposed to use this exact firing range in just a few minutes. Sarah continued working, trying to install the new panels as quickly as possible. She wanted to finish the job and get out of the firing range before the regular training schedule began. She had no idea that her routine repair job was about to become the most important day of her life. At exactly 7:15 in the morning, 6 men in dark uniforms walked through the main entrance of Building 47. These were not regular soldiers. They were Navy SEALs, which meant they were some of the best trained fighters in the entire military. Each man was tall, strong, and moved with perfect control. Their boots made almost no sound as they walked down the hallway toward the indoor firing range. The team leader was Lieutenant Commander Jake Rodriguez. He was 35 years old and had been a Navy SEAL for 15 years. Rodriguez had dark hair, serious brown eyes, and scars on his hands from years of dangerous missions. He had led his team through training exercises in deserts, jungles, and mountains around the world. Today was supposed to be a simple training day at their home base. Rodriguez carried a folder with their training orders. The exercise they were about to do was called Close Quarters Combat Simulation. This meant they would practice fighting in small spaces like buildings or ships. The exercise required perfect timing and teamwork. Each man had to move at exactly the right moment and shoot at exactly the right targets. One mistake could ruin the entire exercise. Behind Rodriguez walked 5 other SEALs. There was Petty Officer Martinez, who was an expert with explosives. Petty Officer Johnson was the team's communications specialist. Petty Officer Thompson was their medic. Petty Officer Davis was their sniper. And Petty Officer Wilson was their demolitions expert. Each man carried a military rifle loaded with real bullets. The SEALs had been briefed about this exercise the night before. They were told that the indoor firing range would be completely empty. No other soldiers would be training there. No maintenance workers would be in the building. The range was reserved exclusively for their team from 7:15 until 9:30 in the morning. Rodriguez looked at his watch as they approached the firing range door. They were exactly on time. In the SEAL teams, being late was not acceptable. Being early was good, but being exactly on time was perfect. Rodriguez had trained his men to arrive at their destination at precisely the right moment. The exercise they were about to perform was very dangerous. They would be using live ammunition, which meant real bullets that could kill someone. The targets were set up throughout the firing range in a specific pattern. Each SEAL had memorized exactly where to shoot and when to shoot. The exercise was designed to test their ability to work as a team while moving through a dangerous area. Rodriguez opened the door to the firing range and stepped inside. The lights were on, which surprised him. According to his orders, the range should have been dark until they arrived. He signaled for his team to stop while he checked the room. This was standard procedure when something seemed different from the briefing. That was when Rodriguez saw something that made his heart stop beating for a moment. There was a person kneeling at the far end of the firing range. The person was wearing work clothes and had tools scattered around on the floor. Rodriguez realized immediately that this was a civilian worker who was not supposed to be there. Rodriguez raised his hand quickly to signal his team to freeze. but he knew they were already in trouble. The SEAL training exercise was designed to begin automatically when the team entered the room. Each man had memorized his movements and shooting positions. They had practiced this exact exercise dozens of times. Their training was so complete that they could perform it perfectly even in the dark. Sarah was still kneeling by the damaged wall, focused on installing a new panel. She had her back to the door and could not see the seals. She was trying to line up the heavy panel exactly right so the screws would fit into the correct holes. This was the most difficult part of her job because the panels had to be positioned perfectly. Rodriguez looked at his watch again. According to the training schedule, his team should begin moving to their positions in exactly 30 seconds. Once they started moving, there would be no way to stop the exercise safely. Each man would follow his memorized pattern, shooting at predetermined targets throughout the room. The problem was that Sarah was kneeling directly in front of several of those targets. The other SEALs were still frozen in position near the door. They could see that their commander had spotted something unusual, but they did not know what it was. Their training told them to wait for Rodriguez to give them instructions, but their training also told them that the exercise would begin in 25 seconds, whether they received new orders or not. Rodriguez felt his mind racing through possible solutions. He could order his team to leave the room immediately, but that would mean canceling an important training exercise that had taken weeks to plan. He could shout for the civilian to leave, but that might cause panic and confusion that could make the situation more dangerous. Sarah finally heard unusual sounds behind her. The firing range was normally very quiet when no one was training, but now she could hear breathing and the soft sound of military equipment. She began to turn around slowly, still holding the heavy wall panel in both hands. When Sarah saw the 6 armed men standing near the door, her mind could not understand what was happening. She had never seen SEALs before. They looked different from regular soldiers. They were bigger, more serious, and carried larger weapons. All 6 men were looking directly at her with expressions she could not read. Rodriguez saw the fear in Sarah's eyes as she turned around. He realized that she had no idea who they were or what they were doing there. She probably thought they were going to hurt her. Rodriguez knew he had to make a decision immediately. In 15 seconds, his team would begin their exercise whether he gave the order or not. Sarah tried to stand up, but the heavy panel in her hands made her clumsy. She almost dropped it, which would have made a loud noise. Her heart was beating so fast that she felt dizzy. She wanted to run, but she was at the far end of a long room with 6 armed men between her and the only exit. Rodriguez made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Rodriguez had 10 seconds to make the most important decision of his military career. He looked at Sarah, who was still holding the heavy wall panel and staring at his team with wide, frightened eyes. He looked at his 5 men, who were waiting for orders but knew their training exercise was supposed to begin in just a few seconds. Rodriguez had trained for 15 years to follow military rules and procedures perfectly. But sometimes, the right thing to do was not in any training manual. Rodriguez made his choice. Instead of shouting orders or trying to evacuate Sarah, he did something that no one expected. He walked directly toward her with slow, careful steps. His rifle was still in his hands, but he held it in a way that showed he was not threatening her. The other SEALs watched their commander with surprise, but they remained in position and waited. "Ma'am," Rodriguez said in a calm but serious voice, as he got closer to Sarah. "I need you to listen to me very carefully. My name is Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez. My team and I are Navy SEALs, and we are about to begin a training exercise with live ammunition. You are currently in a very dangerous position." Sarah's hands were shaking as she held the wall panel. She had never been this close to a Navy SEAL before. She had heard of SEALs, of course. Everyone knew they were the most elite soldiers in the military. But she had never imagined she would meet one, especially not like this. She tried to speak, but no words came out of her mouth. Rodriguez could see that Sarah was terrified and confused. He knew he had to explain the situation quickly and clearly. "We have a problem," he continued. "This firing range was supposed to be empty for our training exercise. But you are here doing your job, which means there was a mistake in the scheduling."
My team has been planning this exercise for weeks, and we cannot simply cancel it. Sarah finally found her voice. "I can leave," she said quietly. "I can pack up my tools and go right now. Just give me a few minutes to collect everything." She started
to move toward her tool bag, but Rodriguez held up his hand to stop her. "Ma'am, I wish it were that simple," Rodriguez said. "But we don't have a few minutes. This exercise is designed to begin at an exact time with precise movements. My men have memorized every step. If we try to change the plan now, someone could get hurt. We need a different solution." Sarah looked past Rodriguez at the other 5 SEALs. They were all watching her with serious expressions. She could see their weapons and their military equipment. Everything about them looked dangerous and professional. She felt like a small, ordinary person who had accidentally wandered into a world where she did not belong. "What kind of solution?" Sarah asked. She was still scared, but she could hear in Rodriguez's voice that he was trying to help her, not hurt her. She could tell that he was a good person who was trying to figure out how to keep everyone safe. Rodriguez had been thinking about this problem while he talked to Sarah. There was only one solution that made sense, but it was so unusual that he had never heard of anyone trying it before. He was about to suggest something that went against every military regulation he had learned. But sometimes rules had to be broken to prevent disasters. "Ma'am, what is your name?" Rodriguez asked. "Sarah Mitchell," she replied. "Sarah, I am going to ask you to do something that will sound impossible. But I believe it is the only way to keep you safe and allow my team to complete our training. I want you to become part of our exercise." Sarah stared at him with complete confusion. "What do you mean?" she asked. Rodriguez took a deep breath. He knew how crazy his idea sounded. "I want you to take my weapon and follow my instructions. You will be positioned in a safe location where you cannot be hurt. You will have a specific role in our exercise. For the next 20 minutes, you will not be a civilian contractor. You will be a temporary member of a Navy SEAL team." Sarah almost dropped the wall panel she was holding. "You want me to take your gun," she said. "I have never held a military weapon in my life. I don't know anything about fighting or shooting or military exercises. This is insane." Rodriguez could understand her reaction. He knew his suggestion sounded completely crazy, but he had thought through all the alternatives and this was the only plan that could work. "Sarah, I know this seems impossible, but I have been watching you since I walked into this room. You are calm under pressure. You did not panic when you saw my team. You are listening carefully to what I am telling you. These are exactly the qualities we look for in special operations personnel." The other SEALs were listening to their commanders, conversation with growing amazement. They had been in the military for many years and they had never heard of anything like this. Rodriguez was asking a civilian to join a Navy SEAL training exercise. It was so unusual that there was probably no rule that specifically said it was not allowed. Sarah looked down at her work clothes and tool belt. She thought about her quiet, ordinary life fixing things on the military base. She thought about how she had always believed she was just a regular person with no special abilities. But here was a Navy SEAL commander telling her that she had qualities that special operations soldiers needed. "I don't know if I can do this," Sarah said honestly. Rodriguez extended his rifle toward her, holding it by the barrel so she could take the grip safely. "Sarah, sometimes people discover abilities they never knew they had. Sometimes ordinary people can do extraordinary things when the situation requires it. Right now, you are the key to everyone's safety. Will you trust me?" Sarah looked at the weapon Rodriguez was offering her. She looked at the 5 other SEALs who were waiting patiently for their commander's orders. She thought about the damaged wall panels she had been trying to fix. Those panels were important, but they were not nearly as important as making sure no one got hurt today. Sarah reached out and took the rifle from Rodriguez. It was heavier than she had expected, but it felt solid and well made in her hands. "Okay," she said quietly. "Tell me what I need to do." Rodriguez moved quickly but carefully as he positioned Sarah for the training exercise. He knew that his team was still waiting for orders, and time was running out. The exercise had to begin soon, or they would lose their scheduled training time. But more importantly, Rodriguez needed to make sure Sarah would be completely safe while helping them complete their mission. "Sarah," Rodriguez said as he guided her to a specific spot near the left wall of the firing range. You are going to stand exactly here. This position will keep you out of any line of fire from my team or from any targets. You will have a clear view of the exercise area, but no bullets can reach you here. Sarah looked around nervously. The firing range seemed much bigger and more complicated now that she was thinking about it as a place where people would be shooting real bullets. She could see targets set up throughout the room, and she realized that the SEALs would be moving and shooting in a carefully planned pattern. Your job is very specific, Rodriguez continued. You will provide what we call covering fire for one, part of our exercise. When I give you a signal, you will fire 3 shots at the target directly in front of you. He pointed to a large target about 30 feet away. Those 3 shots will allow my team to move safely from one position to another. Sarah looked at the target Rodriguez had pointed to. It was a standard military shooting target with circles marking different scoring areas. She had never tried to hit a target like that before. In fact, she had never fired any kind of gun before today. The idea of shooting accurately enough to help Navy SEALs seemed impossible. Rodriguez could see the doubt in Sarah's eyes. He had worked with many new soldiers over the years, and he recognized the look of someone who was afraid they would fail. Sarah, he said gently, I am going to teach you everything you need to know in the next 5 minutes. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to hit that target 3 times. The distance is not too far, and I will be right beside you to help. Rodriguez spent the next few minutes showing Sarah how to hold the rifle properly. He showed her how to aim using the sights on top of the weapon. He explained how to squeeze the trigger smoothly instead of jerking it. He taught her how to stand with her feet positioned for balance and stability. Sarah listened carefully to every instruction. She had always been good at learning new skills quickly, and she found that Rodriguez was an excellent teacher. He was patient and clear, and he made sure she understood each step before moving on to the next one. Despite her fear, Sarah began to feel more confident about what she was being asked to do. Meanwhile, the other 5 SEALs had been watching this unusual training session with amazement. They had never seen their commander work with a civilian before, especially not in the middle of a live fire exercise. But they could see that Rodriguez knew what he was doing, and they trusted his judgment completely. Petty Officer Martinez, who was an expert with explosives, whispered to Petty Officer Johnson, I have never seen anything like this in 15 years of military service. Petty Officer Johnson, who handled communications, whispered back, the commander always finds a way to complete the mission. If he says this civilian can help us, then she can help us. Rodriguez finished his quick training session with Sarah and looked at his watch. They had used up almost all of their extra time, but he felt confident that Sarah was ready. She was holding the rifle correctly. Her stance was good, and she had shown that she could hit the target during a practice aim. All right, Sarah, Rodriguez said. Are you ready to do this? Sarah took a deep breath. Her heart was still beating fast, but she no longer felt panicked. She felt nervous, but it was the kind of nervousness that came before doing something challenging, rather than the terror she had felt earlier. I think so, she said. Rodriguez moved away from Sarah and rejoined his team. He quickly explained to his men how the exercise would work with Sarah's participation. Each SEAL listened carefully and nodded to show he understood his role. They had all worked together for so long that they could adapt to changes in their plans very easily. The exercise began with Rodriguez giving a hand signal to his team. The SEALs immediately started moving through the firing range in their practiced pattern. They moved like dancers who had rehearsed the same routine hundreds of times. Each man knew exactly where to go and when to go there. Sarah watched the SEALs with fascination. She had never seen professional soldiers in action before. They moved with incredible speed and precision. They communicated with hand signals and brief, quiet words. Every movement had a purpose and nothing was wasted. When the moment came for Sarah's part in the exercise, Rodriguez caught her attention and gave her the signal they had practiced. Sarah raised the rifle to her shoulder, aimed carefully at her target, and fired her first shot. The sound was much louder than she had expected, but she stayed focused and fired her second shot. Then she fired her third shot. All 3 bullets hit the target. They were not perfect shots, but they were good enough to complete the exercise successfully. Sarah felt a rush of pride and accomplishment that she had never experienced before. She had done something she never thought she could do. The SEALs continued their exercise, moving through the remaining parts of their training scenario. Sarah watched them work together as a team, each man playing his part perfectly. She realized that she had just been part of something special, something that very few people would ever experience. When the exercise was finished, Rodriguez approached Sarah with a smile on his face. "Outstanding work," he said. "You performed exactly as we needed you to. You may have just participated in one of the most unusual training exercises in Navy SEAL history." Sarah handed the rifle back to Rodriguez, but she felt different now. She felt like she had discovered something about herself that she never knew existed. She had always thought of herself as an ordinary person who fixed things and went home, but today she had been part of a Navy SEAL team, even if only for 20 minutes. The other SEALs gathered around Sarah and Rodriguez. Each man thanked Sarah for her help and told her that she had done an excellent job. Sarah could see respect in their eyes, and she realized that she had earned the approval of some of the most elite soldiers in the world. When the training exercise officially ended, Sarah stood in the sudden quiet of the firing range, still processing everything that had just happened. The rifle felt different in her hands now. It was no longer a strange and frightening object. It felt familiar, like a tool she had been meant to use. Rodriguez walked over to her with an expression that mixed relief, respect, and something that looked like genuine admiration. "That was exceptional work," Rodriguez said as he took the rifle from Sarah's hands. "You just helped complete one of the most unusual and successful training exercises I have ever led. Most people would have panicked in your situation. Instead, you stayed calm, learned quickly, and performed when it mattered most." Sarah looked around at the other SEALs, who were now securing their equipment and preparing to leave. Each man nodded to her with respect as they packed their gear. She realized that she had earned something very rare. She had gained the approval and respect of Navy SEALs, some of the most elite soldiers in the world. Rodriguez pulled Sarah aside as his team finished their cleanup. "Sarah, what happened here today was not just about following instructions or hitting targets. You showed qualities that we look for in special operations personnel. You demonstrated composure under extreme pressure, the ability to learn new skills rapidly, and most importantly, the courage to step forward when others needed you." Sarah did not know what to say. She looked down at her work clothes and tool belt, then back at Rodriguez in his military uniform. She felt like she was living in 2 different worlds at the same time. A few hours ago, she had been a simple contractor fixing wall panels. Now she was receiving praise from a Navy SEAL commander. "I should get back to my regular work," Sarah said quietly. "I still need to finish installing those wall panels." Rodriguez watched her carefully. He could see that something had changed in Sarah's eyes during the exercise. There was a new confidence there, a sense of capability that had not existed before. He had seen the same look in many soldiers after their first successful mission. It was the look of someone who had discovered they were capable of much more than they had ever imagined. "Sarah, before you go back to your repair work, I want to give you something," Rodriguez said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card with his contact information. "If you ever decide that you want to explore a different kind of career, call me. The military could use someone with your abilities." Sarah took the card and looked at it. Lieutenant Commander Jake Rodriguez, United States Navy SEALs. There was a phone number and an email address. She had never imagined that she would have the personal contact information of a Navy SEAL, much less receive an invitation to consider military service. "What kind of career?" Sarah asked. Rodriguez smiled. "There are many opportunities in the military for people who can stay calm under pressure and learn new skills quickly. You could train to become a soldier, or you could work in military intelligence, or you could specialize in special operations support. The choice would be yours." Sarah put the card in her pocket, but she did not commit to anything. She thanked Rodriguez and his team for treating her with respect and for keeping her safe during the exercise. Then she returned to her wall panel repair work, while the SEALs left the firing range. For the rest of that day, Sarah had trouble concentrating on her regular job. Every time she picked up a tool or measured a panel, she thought about how it felt to hold a military rifle and be part of a team exercise. She thought about the way Rodriguez had spoken to her, not as a civilian contractor, but as someone with valuable abilities. 3 weeks passed after the incident in the firing range. Sarah continued her regular work on the military base, but everything felt different now. Her daily tasks seemed smaller and less important than they had before. She found herself watching the soldiers on the base with new interest, wondering what their training was like and what kinds of missions they prepared for. During those 3 weeks, Sarah thought about Rodriguez's offer many times. She took out his card and looked at it almost every day. She researched military careers and read about the different opportunities available to people who wanted to serve their country. She learned about the training programs and the benefits of military service. Finally, Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone who knew her. She went to her supervisor, Jim, and submitted her resignation from her job as a civilian contractor. Jim was shocked because Sarah had been one of his best workers, and he could not understand why she would want to leave a good, steady job. When Jim asked her why she was quitting, Sarah simply said that she had discovered she was capable of doing more challenging work. She did not tell him about the incident with the Navy SEALs because she had been asked to keep it confidential, but she knew that her life had changed direction on that Tuesday morning in the firing range. Sarah used Rodriguez's contact information to get help with her military application process. Rodriguez was true to his word and provided guidance as Sarah navigated the complex procedures of joining the military. He helped her understand the different career options and choose the path that best matched her abilities and interests. 6 months later, Sarah Mitchell was no longer a civilian contractor living in a small apartment near Camp Pendleton. She was Private Sarah Mitchell, undergoing advanced military training at a facility on the other side of the country. Her instructors were impressed with her composure under pressure and her ability to learn new skills quickly. Sarah often thought about that Tuesday morning when she was simply trying to repair some damaged wall panels in a firing range. She had learned that life can change in an instant when someone recognizes abilities in you that you never knew you possessed. Sometimes the most important moments happen when we are just doing our regular job, and someone unexpectedly shows us that we are capable of much more than we ever imagined. The firing range wall panels were eventually repaired by another contractor, but for Sarah, that repair job had fixed much more than just damaged wall sections. It had repaired her understanding of what she was truly capable of achieving with her life.